All right, good morning. Happy Friday. Raise your hand if you're happy it's Friday. All right, all right. We have two report outs and one update. And without further ado, I'll hand it over.
So we had the trades planner and supervisor roles and responsibilities team work this week. So I'm just going to go right ahead and turn it right over to the team leader, Steve Holder.
Good morning, everybody. So, how's everybody doing? It's Raider Week, by the way, Jack. Okay, so let me introduce the team that worked on this problem this week. Is Jason Hopkins, David Mendoza, Patty Wellborn, Ernest Herrera, Nick Montez, Rob Richmeyer, and Veronica Hernandez. We are missing a couple people, Dale Kahn and Christy Bloyer. We're also part of the team. So we have quite a long list of people to thank, specifically the Trades Value Stream core team, IT, many people helped us, and really everyone else you see up there. We utilized quite a few people to get where we need to be this week. So our reason for action, why do we do this? Why do we get together? So job planning for the trade shops requires coordination and communication between the supervisors/leads and planners to effectively and efficiently plan the work. Current job roles and responsibilities between shop supervisors and planners in the scheduling process is unclear and not optimized.
So this is our current state map. And what it shows is the path the Maximo takes from the time it's created until it is scheduled and ready to be dispatched. And it's not as cut and dry as you probably might think. There's a lot of paths that it could take, as shown by all the arrows going in different directions. And that could depend on the priority of it, whether we have all the critical information we need or the size of the job. And we also find that even if the Maximo takes the path of least resistance, it still takes on 10 different handoffs along the process. And that's, we determined that's a pretty high number and probably need to get that down. Along the left side of the chart, we have all the different players involved in the Maximo process, from all of our customers from the different departments on the top, to our planner in the middle, to trade shop supervisors. And what we're finding is disharmony in both ends of the spectrum. From the top, we get maybe a lack of info or different ways of prioritizing the Maximos. And on the lower end, we see all the paperwork that's involved in creating our Maximos. And part of this is 4 different schedule submissions that supervisors send to the planner. She has to orient herself to 4 different schedules in order to do her work. So we don't have a simple process as far as that goes. And this is our current state pinned down into words and pictures. So we have words like chaos, undefined roles, lack of planning, lack of collaboration, and that really speaks to holes in our system, because we've got competent employees working on this and they're doing as well as they can with our current system, but we need to utilize their talent for a better system. So the drawing here shows all our customers throwing Maximos into this in our system, which funnels to us, and we got this dynamite fixing to blow all these Maximos into the different directions we've seen on the current state map. And once we do get them roped into our nice little schedule, here come the emergencies, shown by this fire truck here. We have to get our fire suits on, put out the fires, and then we're left scratching our heads as to how we'll ever get our schedule adherence numbers to improve.
Great, thank you. Good morning. From the current state, we transitioned to our target state, again, using the left brain, right brain thinking. So we came up with a few ideas of where we want to be with our target state. We want to have the right people in the right position to do the right work. The right work being more predictive maintenance type of work instead of reactive maintenance. Being more proactive in the way we approach things. This will help us be more organized, and by being more organized, we'll have more defined roles, and the roles will be clear of what work needs to be done. From that point, we can create the standard work, and when we create a standard work, we'll create a buy-in from everyone globally as a whole here at Denver Water. We'll have everyone on the same page, and then we'll be able to have more complete information so that as we move forward, we'll be able to not only create work orders and standardized work that is going to be effective, but it's going to be efficient, and it'll be a better process as a whole. From that point, we went to our gap analysis, and we took our treasures, and we had to organize them. The treasures are basically the pain points of what we saw that we can improve on, and we were able to organize them with a fishbone chart. And then from that point, Patty comes in, and we had to create some problem statements.
Good morning. So we went through the process of identifying our solutions, our problem statements, the what, why, and how. We came up with our 5 whys. From there, we came up with our root cause and designed some of our experiments. We actually started some of those experiments and had some pretty good successes, and then we've at least identified the future tests that we'll try. And most of those should start within the next week, we think. Per Ernest, we'll see. One of the other tasks that we were given was to identify roles. So that was there was a lot of overlap. So I did some stuff, the supervisor did some stuff. Sometimes we were doing the same things, and we weren't communicating that. We weren't sharing that with each other. So we came up with our little chart. We decided which are the things that we should still be both working on, which are the kind of defined lines between planner and supervisor roles. And from there, we created a communication plan and a maintenance plan. So what's new in this process, we gave one of our supervisors the same tool that I have. So one of the magic tools that I have, we gave him access to that also, so that he can see what I'm doing and I can see what he's doing. And what this will do will help him to see future work, I can see future work. So we are now looking, instead of 1 week out, in some cases we can look 6 months out. So that's a huge improvement. And then that should lead to us better utilizing the functionality of Maximo and Acquire as we start to use some of the tools that were already there, but we have never used in the past. So we'll start adding in fields that we can populate that even our customers can see in Maximo. And then that should help our supervisors execute their plan, their work more efficiently, and we can be more proactive instead of reactive.
Thank you. So this is the trades planning process. They're going to be meeting daily. It could be anywhere from 5 minutes to 30 minutes. Just depends on what work orders are going on, any changes that might need to happen, et cetera. There'll also be a weekly meeting. Typically, this is going to be a Thursday. That's subject to change, but that meeting, they're going to discuss pain points, what's working, what's not, make any adjustments that they need. Review priorities of work. That may require some changes, and look at if there's anybody off on vacation, sick, whatever. You need to have people in order to do the work. If you don't have people, you got to adjust the work. And then they're going to manipulate the schedule to match those resources, and then create a scheduling for the following week. That schedule for the following week is the work that is set in stone, kind of like this is what you're going to be doing, so everybody understands what they're doing. The last one is monthly, so they're going to be meeting on monthly to discuss current projects, upcoming projects, things like that. It may be more often than monthly. It just depends on what that project is and how much work is required there. So this is one of the changes that we're making to the system. We're defaulting, for maintenance, we're defaulting this template. This describes what the work is that you want to do, any special equipment that you might need, parts or tools. Special circumstances like does this have to happen during an outage, or is it you have to wait for a contractor? Which leads me to the next point, the contact information. You need to know, well, who do I contact? If you're contacting a contractor, who is that? And is there any hard time frames that we need to hit? So if you're in an outage, then you want to hit a specific day potentially. So that needs to be communicated. And you also may need an escort, so that's, during that outage. And the detailed location information is, where is it? You're telling me what to do, but I don't know where it is, so detail where that is. That's it.
First off, I just want to thank this rapid improvement team. We went into the week thinking we were going to do the plumbing shop, and I approached the team and asked if we could bump into the metal and mechanical shop because we've got a lot of pain points. And they were open-minded to that, and they worked with me and kind of changed direction, so I really appreciate that, and thank you guys. Second, I'd like to thank all metal and mechanical shop employees. You guys have been getting pulled in a million directions, and you guys are keeping up with it. I've been pushing you guys pretty hard, and I just appreciate all your help and your work. So I'd like to go into, currently we have a lot of unscheduled work. And when we started doing some of these metrics and listing them, one thing kind of pointed out to me was that there was 1 week we had 61% of our work was unscheduled work. And what happens with that is a lot of our PM and our predictive maintenance gets pushed to the back of the line. And if we want to move forward as an organization, we really need to start making progress with our PDM programs. And so this is, the main reason we're trying to get through this is trying to list what are the issues that we're dealing with. For the mechanical shop, we want to get to a 90% scheduled adherence, and right now we're currently about 75%. Unscheduled, I think we want to get to 20% unscheduled work, and currently I think we're sitting around like 35-40%. The metal shop, we want to get to an 80% scheduled adherence, and I think currently that's around 65, something like that. And we also want to get to a 20% unscheduled work for the metal shop. The way we're going to track that is through our Pareto chart, and we're going to list why are we getting pulled for these different jobs. Is it a system condition, or are we getting pulled from a different section? Are they pulling us away from a job, kind of putting other people to the back of the line? We want to try and identify those so we can correct those. So, like I said, this is our production board. This is a production board in our shop. So we sit around this every morning, and we go through our safety topics. We go through jobs that are coming up. We've got training on there, and we also have added this action plan. So when we are starting to identify the different problems at like 30, 60, 90 days, we're going to put that on our action plan, and we're going to work towards it. And we're not just going to say, yes, this is a problem and kind of push it to the back. We want to make sure that we're putting that action plan together and executing the plan. I also want to highlight on the back side of this is something that Tyner Hansel came up with. We had a job that didn't go quite well. We had a lot of different things going on at once, and Tyner brought this to my attention, and it's a very good tool. On the back of it, we've got a section where we have a job so this job didn't go well. So we started listing what happened, what didn't happen, what can we improve on, and we're using that currently, but we're gonna really start getting into that and try to correct some of these actions so that when we do have jobs coming down later on down the line, we don't run into those and we correct them and we're more efficient for the customer. Okay.
Thank you. So I'm going to go off script for just 1 second. It was a tremendous, great week considering we were playing in our sandbox very deep. Our key players for most of the team were from trades, and Veronica was our fresh eyes, thank you. But it flowed very well. I was very impressed with everyone's way they just dug in and found answers and solutions. So one of our experiments was to look at our work priority descriptions. We have been using 1 through 4 for numerous years, and we decided to enhance and add a lot more definition so our customers know what they're choosing. So if you could see number 5 is the top one now, it's emergency. And all of them start off with action required as soon as possible or action required within 2 days. So going down the line, you're going to see where it falls in. It also lists how you potentially can disrupt an established work schedule. Our customers need to know we have schedules. If you choose this, it's a true emergency. We will disrupt that schedule and dominoes fall a little bit. So we added number 5. We enhanced every single one of them. And that's one of our experiments, and we'll see where it goes, and we always have the right to improve upon it. So our event metrics, as you can see up there, Nick touched on some of them. We keep schedule adherence on every single shop, and we have for some time. We need to improve and continuously prove how we capture those metrics. So he did talk about how metal is initially at 56%, and our target's 80. So our 30, 60, 90, we're going to improve hopefully to 65, 75, and then 80 at the 90 mark. And the same with mechanical. You can see they are at 76%. And these are averages. Some months they're on top of it at 100, some months they're a little lower. So we picked an average for those and came up with the percentage.
So we came up with the Maximo training, not only because our priorities are going to be changing, but we really want the delegates who are submitting the Maximo tickets to know what they're doing. And so a lot of them know exactly how to do it perfectly, and we thank them for that, but a lot of other delegates need a little bit of a refresher, or they're brand new and they just don't even know what Maximo is. So we're going to be hosting a training for the admin delegates specifically in October 9th. Christy, myself, and Patty will be hosting that training, hopefully showing people how to do a Maximo ticket. We're also going to let them try it, and we're going to offer resources in case later on they submit another ticket and they don't know what to do. They can reach out to us so that they're doing it right. With our priorities changing, we want to make sure that they're selecting the correct priority. We're also going to give them scenarios so that we can quiz them and say, hey, this happened. We have a leak in the women's restroom on the second floor. What priority would you choose? Just to teach them and educate them, because, I mean, to me, I would assume that's an emergency. You know, to others, that they can probably get to that in a couple hours or perhaps in a couple days. So just for that, thank you. And then we have the completion plan. So there's a few tasks that we're going to be completing in the upcoming weeks. Like I said, the training is going to take place October 9th. And then the trades schedule is now going to be accessible at any time to anyone who wants to access it. So we worked really hard, and Ernest really helped us with this. It's actually now a favorite on Internet Explorer. So if you log on to Internet Explorer, go to your favorites, you know how JD Edwards is listed. The schedule is also listed there. So anybody who needs to see it at any time will have access. So we're going to test that out and see if it's working. If it's not, we can definitely make improvements.
So what are some of the things that we learned this week? The team can highlight a couple things. First of all, we learned the definition of superfluous, and I can't even say it right. Does anybody know that? I didn't. Anybody? Dave, what is it? No, it's just repeating things, redundancy, too much of something. So, hey, you learn something every week, right? Let's see how this process works. Other groups have same issues. We just don't talk about it. Some of the things that we feel we got out of it, best event ever because of the team. We're partial to ourselves. We're a bit exhausted. Glad to be helpful. The Denver Water core values, we think we hit on all of them in many different ways. Highlighting a couple. We valued each other's opinions and expertise and integrity. It was a hard topic. We were all open for feedback. We put our own personal wants aside to make a decision about what is best for Denver Water as a whole. Questions? Bill.
As far as the Maximo delegates who will be riding the Maximos, are there one per department? Are there one for the admin building? And have they been identified?
The question was, are the delegates one per area? Have they been identified? We were able to get a mostly comprehensive list from the admin building of who does what in each section. Some of them have a couple, some are just one. The admin building's too big, too many different departments. It'd be super nice to have one person, and that one person, but that's just not feasible. So we do have a pretty comprehensive list that we think will still grow between now and the training.
One quick question on the long description format that you have in the pre-population. Is that for all Maximos, or is it going to be for CMs, or is it coming through for all of them?
It's only for workers that are going to maintenance. That would default that long description.
And then the second question, and related to that second question, I don't know how much that group uses MDO, but I know in the past, when long description gets, the written text gets too difficult or too long, it won't transfer over into MDO. Is that issue been resolved?
So for the most part, these are not mobilized work orders. So, I mean, first, when you generate work orders from PMs, it doesn't take that long description. That was one of the requirements. It's not supposed to happen. So we typically generate, for field work orders, we generate from PMs. So you're not going to see the long description on there, number one. The only circumstance that we ran into where we may see one come through mobile would be if somebody from the field is creating a work order for maintenance. There, it'll come into Maximo, it will create that template for you, and it'll send it back out as a long description as part of that package that is updated.
Steve, can you add the why you really wanted that field?
So the reason that we wanted this field and why we pushed so hard for it, and we've been trying, this is actually not a new idea, it's a couple of years old, we've been trying to get this, is that it's not intuitive to know what, especially for admin people, they don't necessarily know what they're asking. So if we can prompt them and say, this is what we want to see and this is why we want to see it, and give them reasons, it's much clearer, and people will buy into that. The other side of that is the more information that comes to me, the less I have to call you back. If you submit a work order to me, it's not accurate, it's missing information, I'm going to call you back, I'm going to push back on you. If it's already there, then we've already expedited the process. So that's the reasoning.
I'll get to the Raider guy in a minute. Go ahead, Phil. Not enough. Yes, sir.
So with the long description, I know I think I seen something there as far as hours, and did I see like equipment needed or anything like that?
Yes.
So when these guys are putting out the maximum, my guys are, obviously it could be a variance of things, especially electrical, mechanical, whatever it may be. So how are they supposed to know something as simple as a trip pump can turn into a pool motor when it's all said and done? So how are they supposed to estimate that or figure out what they need to be taken out?
So as far as filling in the long description and what the customer may know or may not know, we're not expecting the customer to know everything. We're just expecting the customer to share as much as they can. So if it's in a vault, just say it's in a vault, you're probably going to need scaffolding, you're going to need some sort of lift, whatever. And if you don't know, that's okay, put I don't know. I don't know if that needs special equipment, and that's okay too. It just saves so much time that we don't have to try to guess. Does that make sense? You still thought we're still not talking about.
Yeah. All right. Mr. Cocazella, you get the last question. What you got? Yes, sir.
Is the list still in place for emergency notification? Because a lot of the times, did we stay with that the call, give us a call, immediate call? Because usually that's what it takes before the maximum gets to where it needs to go.
Yeah, we,
And I think Patty established that, but we need to make that known who needs to be contacted.
when in the value stream, we addressed that. You know, that was one of our just do it. So we did not touch how you're contacting with an emergency. We just were, the priorities are adding the 5 and clarifying those definitions, the 5, 4 through 1. But we didn't change any of that process of emergency, how it comes in. We still want to keep it that way that we established under just do it of a call.
Has that been submitted company-wise? Patty, can we get that out to everybody?
The phone call, that process?
Yeah.
We are still working on that, so we just need Mary to say yes.
Well, I think that maybe we can kind of table that for now. Mary, I'll get back to you, and maybe in our core team, we'll talk about that and see how we can get that out, if it's not out there better. So we don't want to, let's just put Mary on the spot. Okay, we're good. There is another report out, so we're going to cancel ours. Last thing, Gene, thanks for facilitating. Great job as always. Who's next? Yes.
Yeah, no, I just want to say a little thank you for this group. I got to see it at the report outs. A very good example of a bunch of experts getting together, and you guys were, I love the insights there of putting your own individual goals aside so that you could come up something better for Denver Water. And I can see that you've created this. The hardest thing to do is how do we get from less reactive work and more planned work? And it's hard to do that while everything's going on. And you guys created some capacity today or this week to be able to do that and invest it back into the system. I also want to say, Nick, what a great example of leadership to say, hey, I've got a bunch of things coming at me and I need some help and I want to use this process. I want to go first. I think Dale was ready to go too. And so having two supervisors that are wanting to do that is just a great example of leadership and your shop to be able to do that. So thanks to everybody for what you did and thanks for that leadership.
Well, that was a great report out, but I know everybody's waiting for this one, so we'll get forward. If I get the generator preventive maintenance team up here. Okay, and I'll turn it over to Shay. Thank you.
Good morning. So I had the pleasure of working with this amazing and knowledgeable group. This is our third RIE out of the Generator VSA. For those who don't know me, I'm Shayla Gavin-Futis. Next slide, I suppose. And on this team was Phil Malone, Carl Allred, part-time though, Jerry Tischelbout, Bill Peck, Ben Scalodra, Rob Bowman, Brian Rowden, Kevin Finney, and not pictured as Clay, who was actually not in the event, but contrary to popular belief, was mentioned a bunch. And especially his presence in the elevators. So we also would like to give a special thanks to Jason Tausig, Rob Richmeyer, Mary Price, Tom Rude, Mark Cripps, Craig Lamacraft, Tom Holinka, Ian Oliver, Luke Struck, Garth Rye, Patty Wellborn, Tom Hoffler, Ralph Cocazella, and the whole Marston treatment plant staff.
I'd like to thank the Academy. Hi, my name is Carl Allred and from the electric shop. And currently, Denver Water doesn't have a maintenance program to maintain some of the electrical and the mechanical equipment. Now, there is in Maximo the quarterly and annually inspections, but some of these don't satisfy the industry and the manufacturer standards.
So our current state on the generator PMs was that the fleet department's doing some maintenance that came out of our last REI event for environmental compliance. We have PMAs, we have PMBs. We have a contract in place now to do that as well. We're not aware what other departments are doing. They're not aware what we were doing. There's a lot of confusion around the generators and how they were being maintained. We felt that it led to an unsafe and unreliable system. There's a lot of inconsistencies. It's not up to industry standards. There's a lack of training, a lack of ownership, all of the good things that go along with that kind of system. Denver Water's gone through a lot of changes in the way we do business and in staff, which has resulted to getting us here today. We used to do things one way. We're doing things a new way and a better way, and that's why our current state is in chaos. Our target state was to have a standardized set of PMs on the maintenance, the mechanical side, fleet side, electrical side, instrument control side. That's our target. That's what we're going for here. We believe that it would rely in 100% compliancy, accurate record keeping across the company, SCADA to be more reliable in reporting consistent data on all of our generators to necessary people, a more reliable, a more safe, regularly maintained and tested, A big one is I know from the fleet side is we're turning out more customer satisfaction, and our customers knowing what they have and that they can rely on it in the event of a power outage, resulting in less corrective maintenance and unplanned work. Seems like a theme, and more standard work. So that's the target.
I've got I have a lot of information to cover, and I'd like to cover it because I think it represents a bulk of what we did this week. So if you'll bear with me, I'll get through this as quick as possible. 5 whys, everybody's familiar with how that process works, but what did we really do? What did we really uncover? Our first problem statement that we came on was we really don't have rules and processes like interdepartmentally defined. And that really leads to people just being hesitant to take ownership, and we think kind of precipitating a lot of the problems that we're dealing with. So we tried to define all of these roles and responsibilities, and hopefully that leads to empowered employees that are willing to take action. If they see a problem, they'll fix it, and do it right and holistically. Next one was a little interesting. We kind of stumbled upon it, and it actually caused us to have an unplanned intervention. But it was a good. It was good. It was a very constructive dialogue, and that is that safety needs are not being identified currently. And really, what we mean by that, there's a lot of risk out there associated with the work that folks are doing. And it's either just not being acknowledged or it's just not being identified, period. And we kind of struggled with the root cause on that because it's kind of a political issue. And really what we came up with was that the former safety program here at Denver Water just wasn't really proactive and wasn't getting out in the field and identifying those hazards and putting the proper controls in place to make sure that people were working safely. So what we came up with there was something that Drake supplied to us that T&D does, is just came up with he has a pre-job job safety analysis, and we actually integrated that into the standard of work, the SOP that we created. And that's something that will be done every time a task is initiated. It's something a lot of other companies do. It helps to identify those hazards that exist out in the field, and it will help just kind of create a database of how you get around those hazards and just control fixes. So once we implement that, we expect to create a safer work environment for our employees to do this work within. The third problem statement we came up with was there's no training and PM standards for the generators that we have. It's just never been addressed in the past. So we really, the SOP and then some of the other work that, we split the team into 2 groups. My group was tasked with just defining the SOP, and then the other group was really more kind of the nuts and bolts of what we're actually going to do out in the field. Just try to define standards and then ownership. And really hopefully the takeaway out of that is that we have a reliable and compliant emergency power supply system. So, moving on, records just aren't being kept. Historically, there's just been poor communication between the departments, so this leads to a breakdown of what records are needed and then how we actually hold on to them. So again, this is something that we integrated into the SOP. This activity generates these types of records. This is what shall be done with it. And really what it defaults to almost 9 times out of 10 is it gets attached to the Maximo work order. And you have a permanent record of that, of those documents. We in environmental compliance can pull those if we ever need to prove that maintenance is being done to an asset, from a regulatory agency, EPA, state, et cetera. That stuff's all really important to us being in compliance. So the next problem statement was there were no electrical or instrumentation and control preventive maintenance actions being done. And I'll allow Ben to elaborate on this a little bit more, but there really wasn't a standard process for once an asset moves out of engineering and gets handed off to the operational departments, what's expected of that piece of equipment as far as maintenance and so forth. And So we're hoping to identify those PM needs a little more accurately so that we close those gaps, basically eliminate those gaps. And the last one here we had was, so we didn't have a distinction of those preventive maintenance activities for the different categories of generators. The last RIE that occurred in this generator value stream dealt with, it just looked at all of the generators. We have over 50 in the Denver Water fleet. Which ones are super critical? Like if it doesn't work, there could be serious damage to a dam, for instance, all the way to one that goes down to just powering light bulbs in a outbuilding someplace at a remote site. So each of those have different criticalities. What PMs do we need that address those different criticalities, and then how frequently? So we went through a pretty elaborate task of just figuring out, basically tying PMs and intervals to those varying assets and their criticality needs.
Thanks, Bill. So for those of you who don't know, my name's Ben Scalozra. I'm an electrical engineer. And so we identified all these problems, right? The problem statements and our, why this is all happening. So how do we address all these problems? So we broke up into two groups. One group was specifically dedicated to electrical preventive maintenance activities on the generators, and the other group was dedicated to engine mechanical and instrumentation and controls. So we kind of had the subject matter experts in their groups kind of discussing everything and trying to figure out, what's the path forward. Can you go to the next slide? So here's a few examples of some standard work that came out of that. I'll kind of start in the middle and work my way out. So in the middle, this is our nuts and bolts document, right? So this is what lists every activity that would happen on a preventative maintenance basis. So this is like change your engine oil, this is change the coolant oil, this is inspect circuit breakers, conductors, everything like that. Everything associated with the equipment. And then to the left of that, you see the implementation plan. That is color-coded, and that goes back to what Bill was saying about the generator criticality. So we've got all these activities in all this standard work activities, but how frequently are we going to be doing them? We're going to be doing them obviously more frequently on the more critical generators to keep them as robust as possible. And then on the right-hand side, you see a pre-work safety assessment plan. That was Drake. We have this JSA document that's going to be filled out before every preventive maintenance activity is performed, irrespective of discipline. And then Bill had also mentioned the turnover from engineering to operations of new capital improvement projects. So despite operator training, which happens at the end of every commissioning phase for a new project, there's still some, and this came out of this improvement event, which is kind of not specific just to generators maybe, but there was maybe a miscommunication once a project was complete from engineering standpoint to, say, the trade shops about, well, what needs to be maintained, what was upgraded, what are these maintenance activities, So we came up with this small transmittal type of form that's just, hey, here's what we added, here's the equipment that requires maintenance, and kind of here's a high-level overview of what the maintenance would be.
Thank you. So after we created standard work, we thought it'd be a good idea to go out in the field and walk a generator. So we went to Marston, which is not pictured here, but very similar. If I didn't tell you, you probably wouldn't know anyway. But went out to Marston and their main filter building generator system. It's one of our more complicated systems, so we thought we'd start there. So I think it was eye-opening for everybody to see exactly what's involved in the process from generating power to getting it to an MCC or end user there. There's a lot of moving parts. We got to walk main switch gear, LCPs, transfer equipment, looked at how that might look to open all that stuff up, remove breakers, get them tested, mega conductors. Brian showed us some stuff in some LCPs, components that might go bad, UPSs, that whole system, which I think was good for everybody to see. Because when we think of power generation, we think, well, there's a generator and there's a couple wires hooked up to the building, and really it's a very complicated system that needs maintained. So we also identified some of our safety systems, so LCPs, which aren't in front of the switch gear, so that's nice. Engineering has been working diligently to get those installed, and an arc flash reduction mode, which is new to some people. I think the electric shop's on board with it, but we've got some modes we can put the system in while they're doing these PMs to keep everybody safe. Our 10 safety points were, we did get that pre-job assessment plan, which is great because it also identified something I like, all the electrical hazards, but every hazard that could exist or does exist, PPE required. So that's a great checklist before we do this work. The arc flash reduction mode I was talking about, I'm not sure everybody knew about what that meant or what that is, but there are blue switches on the wall next to switch gear. So that was good to go over those. The arc flash warning, so some of the pump stations, I'm not sure how many, maybe Ralph could tell us, they've got a warning of strobe, flashing strobe that's installed now, so that when they're energizing pumps. So that was new to some of the team. And then the NFPA compliance issues with 70E, we're really, when we're doing all this PM work, we are really bringing Denver Water's electrical equipment into compliance. The safety culture awareness Bill touched on, that was good for us to have the intervention from safety come in and talk to us a little bit about what their future goals are for safety culture at Denver Water. Then we got to define what a qualified person was, because it was, it came up, well, at a plant, who would do some of the electrical PM. So we got to talk about what NFPA defines a qualified person as. Importance of electrical equipment maintenance for employee safety. So that's part of that 70E compliance, which is a safety standard. When we're maintaining our equipment, we're creating a safe system. And again, with qualified persons come defined roles and who gets to do what, or who's qualified to do what. And overall, at the end, we're going to have a safe and reliable system.
So what's next? So I'm Brian from ICS. Over the next couple months, we kind of hope that our stakeholders will kind of look over our PM of what we kind of hope to see happening, and see where they can kind of allocate some of our resources and where it best be served. Obviously, generators are very important, but some of the electrical that has been kind of cast aside needs to be inspected and looked over as well before, like we said, they work in conjunction. So if one part isn't working or up to, full compliance, then the other part is, kind of a weak link too. We also need Patty to kind of go through and help kind of do the logistics of how are we going to schedule all of this with in Maximo, of getting everybody kind of on the same page to be able to, get all of our PMs in order. Then we need to, do ongoing kind of review of how well this is effective. Are our generators more reliable? Is everybody more comfortable? How is this going? We also need to work on training in our individual teams of, whether that's the fleet, of talking with each individual person and kind of going over, what we're wanting to go through, and if they have any questions, or if it's me and the ICS team of, some of the aspects that we need to look at. And then after we kind of go over that, go clear into full load testing. We kind of want to do PMs on almost all of our generators before we do full load testing, but it's again kind of the logistics of, maybe we can get some testing done on some of the panels and then do a full load on that panel a couple months later. That's all the things that we have to look at to, kind of further this event.
Phil Malone. So real quick before I go through the metrics, just if people don't understand how important these generators are, it's actually kind of crazy because during this event, we had a generator failure at one of our pump stations, and the generator, even though the switchgear and everything was new at the pump station, the generators are from the 70s, and because it failed, we dropped power at the station for almost 20 hours. So something simple as a small generator can knock out the power to the entire pump station or facility and leave it out for Lord knows when. So for the metrics, the electrical equipment tag 70 compliant, we were in initial state of 5%, but the target is obviously 100%. We want all pieces of equipment that is out there, whether it's generators, switchgear, anything electrical, be tagged so people know what they're dealing with when they walk in. And also with inside that, we're also doing stuff ourselves in our section to mark out areas for electrical safety, and also the sirens and the horns when things are started. Maintenance record keeping, initial 5%, target 100%. Obviously, the fleet was doing the maintenance and they were doing record keeping, but they work in M5, if I'm not mistaken, right? And a lot of us work in Maximo, so there was no way for us to go in and look at what's been done or whatever. So the point is, the goal is to get stuff in Maximo and M5. That way, if anybody wants to go look at what records are being done, we can all pull up the same records. Standard work for PM and generators, initial was 0. We have 51 out there, and we actually got them done for all 51. Also, there is a contract right now being done for our large generators, which will be taken care of hopefully in the next couple of months. Full-scale testing of generators, we're at initial state of 0, and the goal is to get all 51 done. We cannot do the electrical testing yet as far as full-scale until all the PM stuff is caught up. And once we get that going, then we'll get the electrical part going. And then end user monthly PMs for generators, we're at 0, and the goal is to get 51. For my guys, we actually own half these generators. So there's already something in our inspections for our pump stations and stuff like that we're to inspect the generators, but we came up with a form that's actually going to give them a little more in-depth form to give them more specific things to check when they are checking these, and these will also be uploaded to Maximo when they do their monthly inspections. Then safety improvements, they already went over those. The initial was 0, and then the target was 10, and then we actually came out with 10.
So the insights, what do we learn? The trade shops all work together. There's a lot of people involved in keeping this stuff going. A lot more generators are SCADA connected than anybody thought. We needed to change the culture of how we deal with this stuff to make it reliable and safe. How do I feel? I think the overview is that everybody that was involved in this is confident and relieved that we have a good system that's going to improve how all this stuff works and make it more reliable for the end users. What values, vision, excellence. There was a lot of respect and passion. Everybody that was involved in this was respectful to each other, and there was a lot of passion. Phil and me and pretty much everybody here has a dog in this hunt. This stuff needs to work, so it was overall good.
So here is our great partner Clay in an elevator, because we were actually working on generators, not elevators. But this group would like to thank Drake and all of CI for helping us through this event. Now we'll take any questions. Wow, we were that good. Okay. Okay, question in the back.
So, a lot of our breakers are they're not going to be able to be 70E compliant without being replaced. Is there a plan in this effort to replace those breakers? Like mop
Good luck, buddy.
What I would say about that is we can maintain those breakers, and you're right, Moffitt's a good example of a system that, it's been behind on PM, especially in that main switchgear. Engineering has been doing a really good job of going through all the facilities, like we're doing at Foothills right now, that huge project replacing all the UN substations. Obviously, we can't get to everything, but in that case, I think we could do a pretty good job of maintaining those breakers until then. I don't think the plan is well, I don't know what the plan is engineering-wise for Moffett. I would assume that, like everywhere else, we're bringing all that equipment up to speed. But at this point, no, there's no plan besides doing a real PM on those breakers, taking them out, having them serviced at the factory, having them tested by a third-party testing agency. All those things go a long way.
So are we going to start incorporating that in our outage schedule?
Yeah, we'll need to. We talked about scheduling quite a bit and all the parties that are going to have to be involved. So obviously plants, when we have outages at plants, pump stations, like we do now for capital projects, we need to schedule that stuff. Marston did a really good job last year. I was pushing the PMs to be done at Marston. We had a project come up, as you know, with the transformers. We shut the plant down, and engineering and construction management and everybody that heads those organizations was really helpful in getting that done. So we got Marston up to speed PM-wise on all that equipment.
Hey, Rob, while you're speaking, can you give a little description of the 70E rules and regulations on how they really take effect when the breaker sizes are 100 amp and over, and how that really pertains to the filter plants and the bigger generators as compared to the pump stations where the breaker sizes are a little bit smaller, but the 70E downplays it. That doesn't downplay it totally, but it really is a drop off.
Yeah.
Can we answer that question after, just for the sake of keeping this to an hour?
Sure.
Next report out.
Mhm.
Not to cut you off, but it's a little more technical. We can handle that after.
I just want to say thanks again. Another great event, and it's actually it's a really good example where you've got a lot of people that need to be involved in it, because you got compliance, safety, every system, treatment, distribution, and even in the SOS side on some of these generators, and to get everybody together and put their input in and then sort through that. Again, another great example of collaboration. It's a really good example too, though, that one of the downsides of CI is we find all these opportunities of things we need to make better, and that's a great thing. And you guys were bringing some of these things up, and one of the afternoon report outs, we were talking about how much can we do right off the bat? And there's a million things that we need to do to make the organization better. I think you guys did a really good job of sorting out what is the most important, have a good plan of how we're going to attack it, and be able to sort through that. And that takes there's a lot of passion in the room and a lot of good collaboration to work that out so that we'll end up with a good plan. But really good job of finding great improvements. Jim.
In our last presentation, we're gonna, is this 30, 60, what is this?
What do you mean 30? Oh, yeah.
60-day report out? Yeah. I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, hi, I'm Selene from the laboratory, and I guess I have like 5 minutes. I asked about this and I got the look, so I'm gonna try to go through it as quickly as I can. So the title for this presentation, or part of my A3, is Filters and Money. So the reason for action is that Denver Water spends $42 per filter in order to do metal analysis. That is a yearly cost of about $25,000. So the reason for action is there an alternative filter that can still fulfill the objectives of this metal testing? And the scope is confined to basically a study, right? Evaluated an alternative filter. So the initial state, like I said, is $25,000 a year. I actually did a comparison analysis throughout years. So this is from 2015 through 2019. And that cost is pretty much repetitive, right? Year after year is about $25,000. And the new filter that I was proposing to test would mean that Denver Water will save about $15,000 to $10,000 per year. So this is data that came from a rapid experiment, phase 1. Basically, what we got was 2 types of filters, and I don't know how to drive these things, so I guess, okay. So type A and type B are basically the same filters, just different configurations. That is the $17 filter. Now, the current filter, which is this one right here, is a $42 filter. So samples were collected in the watershed and then analyzed for all the metals that we can analyze for. And as you can see, the differences in concentrations in parts per billion, they were pretty insignificant, except for barium right here, but this is not one of the requested analytes. So that was phase 1. Phase 2 was actually to confirm that the variability that we were not seeing, it was really reproducible. So again, we took filter A, the current filter, and filter B, in samples that are collected in the watershed, and they were analyzed for the entire suite of metals. And as you can see, most of them are pretty reproducible. They're within the same order of magnitude, except for aluminum. Aluminum right here, it ranged anywhere from about 75 to 91 parts per billion. So there's a difference in filters in terms of aluminum. So what does that mean for Denver water? A little bit of background information. Aluminum is the third most abundant element on the Earth's crust. It accounts for about 8% of the total mass. It was purified and produced in 1825, and it was popularized by the time of the World War II. That's when we started making use of aluminum in high concentrations. The production in 2012 is about 48 million metric tons, and that only continues to increase over time. The daily intake for an average adult is about 8.5 milligrams in the US compared to 3.6 in Canada. So we do ingest a little bit more aluminum than other countries. Generally speaking, aluminum is in low concentrations in meats and in higher concentrations in vegetables, cereals, and fruits. Especially in spices. Spices are actually pretty high in aluminum concentration. And an interesting fact is that sodas that come in a can, you can ingest anywhere from about 600 ppb to 900 ppb compared to the same product in a glass bottle. So that is a significant difference in ingestion of aluminum. So in terms of guidelines about ingestion of aluminum, right? The World Health Organization actually didn't come up with a health-based guideline, and that is because aluminum is also used during treatment. We use it for coagulation purposes of removing dissolved organic matter. But what the WHO did come up with is a practical level based on that optimization of the treatment, and that is at 100 ppb for large water treatment plants and about 200 ppb for small water treatment plants. Now, Canada does have a guidelines level of about 100 ppb. And the US EPA does have a secondary drinking water standard, which is not enforceable. It's just a guideline for treatment plants to know what to aim for. And that level is anywhere from 50 to 200 ppb. So the next question for me logically was like, well, how much aluminum do we have in the plants, right? Forget about what's in the watershed, which is kind of far away, but what's actually coming out of our water treatment plants. So this is a graph for aluminum. This is the influent. And for the influent, Marsden and Foothills do get about like 60 parts per billion over time. This is from 2013 through 2018. And then in terms of what is treated and coming out of the plants, all the plants are coming right below that threshold of about 100 ppb. Our concentrations are mostly in the 40 ppb range, with Moffett coming in at about 20 ppb range. So well below what we expected to have an effect on human health. Now, in terms of that change that we saw of about 10 ppb, what does that mean in terms of water quality standards that we see in the watershed? So in 1988, the EPA came up with a level for fresh acute effects expected on aquatic life at 750 ppb, and for chronic exposure of aquatic life, about 87 ppb. In 2017, they revised these levels, and then they increased those concentrations. However, CDPHE has aluminum right here still for chronic exposure at a limit of 87 ppb. And that corresponds to the 1988 criteria that the EPA set. So the conclusions for these rapid experiments is that we assess the potential use of an alternative filter in response to the cost. All metals except for aluminum show no significant difference. At the tested concentrations, aluminum is very close to that aquatic standard that was set by CDPHE of 87 ppb. Therefore, the outcome of this study is that we should keep the $42 filter because it adds value to the data that our customers utilize to make decisions. So, insights. Data-driven evaluations are welcome and appreciated. I don't see this as a failure. Even though the testing of the new filter didn't support the use of that new filter, it's still a piece of data, right? And I think that the lesson learned is more important than the actual outcome. And thanks to the operations team for collecting the samples and the laboratory for testing them. So, with that, do we have any questions? And I did it in like 7 minutes.
I'm not quite sure where the treatment process is going to apply, but the question relates to orthophosphate, the potential addition of orthophosphate in terms of the functionality of the filters and effect on them.
So your question is, do we foresee any effect on the filter, the fact that we're going to have maybe higher concentrations of phosphate or orthophosphate? It shouldn't interfere with it, and these filters are used for metals, phosphate, which are cations. Phosphate is an anion, so it's not subject to this process, but it shouldn't interfere with it.
Right, thank you, Selene. This is, can everybody hear me? Selene, this is how Selene lives and breathes. She's constantly looking at ways to make things better, and I'm a big proponent of that, so thank you, Selene, for that continuous improvement is kind of like part of our DNA, and she's constantly looking for those opportunities. And then challenging yourself to say, oh, this is a great idea, but then when you maybe dig into it a little bit further, you realize that maybe not, and that's okay. Right. So thank you for looking into this and trying to help us identify ways to save costs, but also recognizing that maybe there's a greater value to not saving the cost. Because water quality, when it comes down to it, for Denver Water, water quality is really paramount to what we do. It's the product we deliver. So it's really important that we have good water quality as opposed to saving maybe $10,000 a year. So awesome job.
Well, I hope everybody felt pretty good, right? Good teams, solving good problems, yeah? So keep that up if you've not been on a recent activity, rapid improvement event, or choosing by advantages. Find a team, be fresh eyes. I see some faces here that are going to get started here pretty quick. So with that, have a great weekend.